Good morning or good afternoon, depending on when you're watching. Hopefully you guys didn't have too many problems with your mystery homework last week. I know that I read some of the Facebook comments and there was some issues with piecing the flying geese together and accidentally chain piecing too many into one row. So this week, a lot easier homework. All you're going to be doing is making half square triangles. So you can't make it any easier than that. Your cutting instructions for this week. You need to cut 44-inch squares of your dark 1. You're going to cut 24-inch squares of your dark 2. And you need to cut 64-inch squares of your light. You are going to draw the diagonal line on the back of the light fabric. And then you are going to stitch the scant 1/4 inch on each side of that line. Buttons is trying to help me as always with videos. All right, and we discussed scant 1/4 inch a little bit last week with the flying geese. So if your 1/4 inch is set on your machine, let's say you have an automatic setting or you have a 1/4 inch foot, what you want to do is move your needle closer to your drawn line by just a little smidge, okay? So like my machine likes to default to 8.3 when it moves over to the right. And obviously I'm showing you this a little backwards here. But your machine might set at 2.4 as your center. If you move that all the way over to 5, some of the smaller machines, the Genovi Gem, the HQ Stitch, the Elna, they all kind of go 5 as the furthest over. So that would be my recommendation. All right. But I'll also show you a little bit later a more close-up of what I'm talking about with the scant 1/4 inch. Okay. So let's stitch these. Now, remember, this is something that you can chain piece, okay? So I actually drew all my lines, stacked all of my pieces, set them beside me on the table over here, and I am just feeding them through here, keeping an eye on the line. Fortunately, my machine does like to keep things pretty straight, and once I have gone through and done one side of my pieces, I can cut them apart here. If you guys didn't know you had this on the side of your machine, hey look, there's a thing on the side of your machine you can do that with. We also sell a cute little thing that you can recycle your rotary blades with. It's a little flower and you can tack them over there. But all right, so now I'm going to just go back through here in the other direction. Now remember when you're chain piecing, not to play bobbin chicken, all right? Because you'll be going and going and going and thinking, oh, look at all these pieces I finished. And then you'll look and you'll be like, wait a minute, they're not sewn because I was playing bobbin chicken. And there's a not straight line because Buttons decided to walk across while I was trying to do this. It's okay, it is fixable. All right, so now that you have stitched your half square triangles, a scant 1/4 inch on each side, you want to cut on that diagonal line. All right, if you guys want to sit around and do this while you're watching TV, or if you want to use a pair of scissors, you can do that also. But you want to press towards your dark, whether it's your dark 1 or your dark 2. All right, get that seam pressed open. Make sure when you're pressing that you've pressed that seam all the way open. If it has some give in it still where that seam is, that's going to cause some issues when you're sizing everything up down the road. All right, because this is not going to be a perfect 3.5 inch square, which is what size you're trimming these down to. And if you haven't given that a full press over, then you're going to find later it's going to start stretching on you even though you've trimmed it. So we're going to take this, we're going to grab our ruler, we're going to use the diagonal line on our ruler, right on that diagonal here. We want to cut this down to 3.5 inches. There is not a lot to trim off on this, okay? So I'm going to make my side cut and my top cut first. Make sure when you're doing that trim that you're at 3.5 or over on your left and your bottom side of the piece. And then you're just going to rotate that around. Now we're going to line up 3.5 on our left, 3.5 on our bottom, and do the other two sides. See how much I cut off of there? Just barely anything. And that's what you're going to get when you're using the Scant 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you're not using a Scant 1/4 inch, you're probably not going to have anything to trim, and you might be a little bit under. Now, here's the thing. Let's say I was a little bit under when I did that square, okay? I pressed this open, I measured it, and I've found that I am under 3.5 inches. What can I do to fix that without having to make a whole bunch of new pieces? You can go back, leave that seam in there, and stitch one thread in from where your original stitch was. Okay, so if my original stitch is here, I want to stitch just a little bit more towards this, then pull out that seam. Okay, that's going to keep this from stretching while you're trying to re-put that in there. And I know that wasn't a word. Then you can go ahead and press again, and that should bring it up just enough for you to make it in there. Okay, so I'm going to send this email out to you guys, post this on YouTube, but I'm going to add a tutorial in here and kind of go into a little more description about the Scant 1/4 inch. Okay, so I promised you guys a tutorial on a Scant 1/4 inch. Now, where I have drawn in purple is my center line and a 1/4 inch to each side of that center line. So I took my ruler, all right. I know that there's a Scant 1/4 inch right here, or I'm sorry, a 1/4 inch right there. I've placed that 1/4 inch on my diagonal in the center from point to point, and I drew that line. Now you can see by drawing that line, I'm no longer on a 1/4 inch theoretically, because my pen has width, so it's actually a little bit more than a 1/4 inch. I did the same thing on this side. When I'm talking about a Scant 1/4 inch in your stitching, my black thread here is just inside of that 1/4 inch. So that is what we are calling a Scant 1/4 inch. All right. Hopefully that gave you some more information about the terminology behind a Scant 1/4 inch, and it'll make things a lot easier when you're piecing half square triangles, flying geese, 1/4 square triangles. Lots of different blocks require that you use the Scant 1/4 inch to get that open seam when you're trying to make multiple pieces out of one fabric. All right, so when you're doing the no waste flying geese method, or you're doing 2 half square triangles, all right, it definitely helps from wasting fabric. If I told you to do a regular 1/4 inch, I would have probably needed to move that up to 4.25 inch of a square instead of a 4-inch square, just so you would have that safe zone for piecing. All right, thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys later. Bye.